Hi, Brian.
Hi, Tom. How's it going, man?
I'm doing really good.
Good. Well, you've had yourself a good sighting here, I believe, down in Little Rock, was it?
That's correct.
All right. And well, if you could shoot along, give me a date and a time and some details, and we'll just take her from there.
Great. You know, it was Christmas night, right about twilight, when I left Little Rock heading for a funeral. It was not my favorite thing to do, and being as how it's Christmas, you can imagine I was in a very peculiar mood as I left the house that evening.
Right.
And I topped up a fresh cup of hot coffee and had my nap that afternoon, so I was ready to drive to Montgomery, Alabama, where I had to go to a funeral the following day.
Right.
So I'm a bit of an independent kind of guy, and I'm driving down there on my own, and I just get to the edge of Little Rock over the bridge. We have a twin city, Little Rock, North Little Rock.
Right.
And as I just get sort of near the city limits of North Little Rock, heading out towards Memphis, I'm looking out into an open, blank farm area with no particular city lights in front of me. To my right is the Little Rock Airport section of town, and I happen to be noticing the various approaching and departing aircraft at that time. So I noted on my watch it was about, say, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I knew I had a rough time frame to get there by midnight or so. It was sort of the way I tend to travel.
Right.
And as I was leaving town, I looked into the sky and I saw two airplanes appear that were swooping in at an astounding speed, as if two jets following tail and tail pursuit directly towards the Little Rock Airport.
Okay.
Now, at this point when I noticed them, they sort of broke through the clouds. I want to tell you it was approximately a 3 to 4 mile visibility in terms of the way most people report air visibility. And from my perspective, it looked like they were at a typical jet airplane altitude when they first came into my attention. But they were swooping in at such an incredibly acute descension angle. They came in very fast, maybe, what do planes travel, 350 miles an hour, 400 miles an hour, and they're coming in as if it's almost, they're going to hit the ground. I thought,
oh, geez.
They literally looked like shooting stars.
Oh, my goodness.
Compared to a normal landing approach at that time in that particular airspace.
Gotcha.
So I couldn't help but slow my car down to a relatively slow speed on the freeway here, and I started studying them intensely, and I noticed that being as how they were really one right on the tail of the other,
right,
I couldn't quite fathom why this scene was unfolding. Now, this was shortly after September 11th, so
right.
Awareness here was higher.
Oh, I bet you it was.
Well, I was able to make out that the foreground craft was larger than the one behind it. This was part of the telltale emphasis here was the foreground craft seemed to have a bright white light on it, and the rear craft seemed to have yellow light.
Okay.
To compare the quality of their
right.
And their motions were very rapid, so as they descended, they came down and began to behave not unlike helicopters, floating about what I might describe as 500 to 900 feet above the ground.
Okay, then at points maybe hovering?
They weren't exactly coming to a stop at this point. We're still talking about an airplane-like speed. And, and at this point, they start to behave relatively like, say, a twin-engine Cessna or a crop duster.
Okay.
Again, this is a farm area, so I've probably seen a lot of crop dusters. And
probably, yeah, I bet.
Here they were flying at about the height of a typical crop duster at its very highest.
Okay.
Yeah. And as they began to come at me, their speed became slower and slower. So the scale became very apparent that the foreground craft was, you know, a pretty big-looking jet-like sized item. And the one behind it was smaller. But again, my eyes were on the big one.
Right.
So I have to sort of like shift. I'm looking at these things at a distance of maybe a mile and, well, maybe 2.5 miles. So they're pretty far away as I began to intently focus on them, and I could see the actual aircraft-like shape of the foreground object from the horizontal plane,
right,
and how it had a wing-like appearance and a tail-like section and a true fuselage appearance.
Gotcha.
That is important because as I continue to describe this, you'll see this is a big black triangular aircraft, and it begins to come straight at me, at which point it nearly came to a complete halt. And here it was not more than 2 blocks away.
Okay, jeebus.
Now at this point, I'm looking at something that's clearly bigger than a Boeing 737.
Right.
And behind it, I can tell, is a smaller helicopter that has all the appearance of a U.S. military helicopter. I've since looked it up. That's the Huey type copter with the full armament for anti-aircraft missiles and all that sort of stuff attached on it, you know.
Amazing, absolutely amazing.
Now, and again, I'm a little bit aware of civilian craft, but I'm not any expert of any kind about airplanes.
Right, okay. Nope, gotcha.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So I'm studying this closely. I slowed my car down to just virtually a crawl, observing that it was going to come just in front of my car if we both continued at the same speed.
Right.
And it starts gently coming directly towards me, not more than a few degrees in front of my windshield vision.
Jeez.
Okay, so as it's coming at me, I can make out, Brian, very clearly the lighting pattern and the general physics of this thing. And it had a circular area in the center.
Right, and actually here, Tom, I've just brought up your great graphic. It's an excellent graphic, and so now I'm listening to this and I can see what you're talking about at the same time. So this is great. Good.
Okay, well, it had this big round circle in the center, which had the appearance of a glowing, dim white light. And when I refer to a white light, I'm going to tell you relative to sunlight, because I'm a photographer.
Okay.
And sunlight for me is 9,500 degrees Kelvin, give or take, depending on what light box you want to look at that day. But I'm looking at a bluish colored light, as most people would observe. And against it and surrounding this circle was a circle of what appeared to be swimming pool lamps. Big glass domes on a commercial scale with sort of a 16 to 20 inch profile to the glass dome, surrounded in a trim ring, a glowing, perfectly consistent yellow 3,200 degree Kelvin at most, warm type of light.
Right, gotcha.
And the color temperature is noteworthy because against the bluish center wall, I could see the stable form of the outer lamp circle. Now, it was also a perfectly symmetrical ring of lamps, and in trying to draw it, I think I concluded I had 11 members creating a 12-point clock-like circle. And in the ball area in the center, it was not operating at a very bright intensity, and I could consequently see what appeared to be a dichroic glass reflective surface on the inside of that circle area.
Yeah, and that's what it appears. And actually, in your the bottom of this diagram here, the graphic, it almost looks like sort of an indentation, like in other words, like a pea pod. It's rough description. Anyways, the best I think you can think of by looking at it. And it sort of looks like everything was sort of inset a little bit.
Correct. Now, you know when you go to the House of Mirrors at the State Fair, and they have mirrors adjacent to mirrors adjacent to mirrors, one can get an elusive sense of space that may or may not be real. And I could see that the panels on the inside of this ball were like an inverted mirror ball.
Gotcha, okay.
And as this thing continues to very, very gently come towards me, I make out more and more detail.
Okay.
Undeniably, I'm looking at a ribbed array of reflective surfaces that constitute a globe shape.
Right, okay.
Now, here's where it really got interesting, Brian. On the corners of the triangular ship, they appear to have a small circle area as well that's in a cutaway, a hole, in the bottom of the plane, and a very bright and very adjustable type of lamp source behind that would appear to have a servo quality, like what we call a varilight in the stage lighting business.
Yep.
And it can not only vary its width and its focal point, but also its intensity.
Right, and was that thing, because I'm looking at this too, now as this thing is flying around, were these like, term would be sweeping the ground, sweeping the area as it moved?
Yeah. So what was most noteworthy at this point is that the three triangular cornered positions enabled three distinctly separate sweeping motions of light.
Gotcha.
Being emitted, and the circle that they left on the ground, I would say, would be of equal size at this point.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
amazing.
It nearly appeared to be establishing a sweep pattern in the sense a computer might want to record a textural surface.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Now, again, it's continuing toward me, and I'm making every effort possible to study the bottom edge of this thing. And the first thing I think I noticed was that the lines, it's designed as a nearly perfect triangle, but it actually is longer in the frontal dimension than it is on the either side by a few millimeters.
Right.
And the edges are not perfectly straight lines. I'm saying that because I was looking directly down adjacent to what would be, I guess it's left wing, port starboard.
Gotcha, yeah.
Okay, and on the wing facing toward me, that would have been parallel, more or less, perpendicular to my view, so it was looking relatively flat. But again, it was in such a way I could see it, the whole thing as a slightly curvilinear, almost a membrane, like a rubber band form stretched around this triangular outer perimeter. And these circular lights on the corners were just sort of scanning randomly across the field. It's like sort of like a cotton field over here.
Right.
And here he's coming straight at me. Now, I'm looking into the circle in the middle as it begins to be truly overhead. And I can see that there is a strangely shaped metal assembly in the center of this building.
Gotcha.
And this metal assembly appeared to be like a flat cap surface of approximately 2 or 3 feet around that was suspended and hanging down on a pole-like surface. So I'm looking at a bright ball with a sort of a blackish gray circle dot in the center of it, wondering why does it have a dot in it, and is it in fact hovering or not hovering?
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now, instantly, in a matter of a third of a second, this thing, the circle dot changes shape and changes form. Most amazing thing I could ever recognize, and unless I was completely hallucinating.
I don't think so.
It took on a very interesting character. I could loosely describe it as it assumed the shape of a drilling bit in the oil industry.
Yeah. Well,
it opens up as like a 4-pointed star, but the shapes of these mirrored surfaces, again, as it opened, appeared to match the actual internal shape of the glass dome itself. In other words, we had an inversion of what was already established as a field of reflective surface. And as it opened, it then began to spin. And it's the classic way that any motor spins up when you apply power. It got spinning really fast, really quickly. And so all I could see was, from what was a gray dot to an array of reflective diamond-like shapes to a sudden spinning motion. And at this point, it begins to lift itself upwards.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
Okay, this, I calculated at this point, was somehow going to affect its brightness, because it was going to then reflect the light source, which was technically above all this, from a new angle. Well, that's exactly what happened. It got very bright very quickly. Now, in addition to observing the white character of the light, I was able to see what appeared to be a ring of blue flame around the top edge of all of that. So now the circular form, which is like a stick with an array of mirrors on the end of it, again, like a mirror ball.
You bet.
is shooting its way upwards into the blue circle of flame. And when it hits the blue circle of flame, the lamp becomes so bright no one could look at it.
Holy crap.
You know, 100 to 1 brightness ratio compared to where we were a second earlier.
Right, gotcha, exactly.
And most people, of course, would have simply turned their eyes away from it and said, holy, I can't look into that.
Yep.
It's beyond human comprehension. For me, it wasn't that big a deal. I've spent a lot of time in Hollywood and around the stage set, and I know what it looks like to turn on a 10K HMI.
I can imagine.
So I squint down to achieve about an F-32 dynamic range, and I continue to stare at that white dot best I can. And again, it appears to be creating a floodlight-like spotting field below. And I realized then it better concentrate on anything but the bright light. And I went back to studying the triangular corner fields. And they, too, took on different shapes, such as broadening or narrowing the beams. And the beams appeared to be operated by almost teenagers because they were just so scattered and crazy in their array. You know, I couldn't understand why the front one was trying to splay off at about 8 degrees while the back one was going to the opposite direction by 4 degrees and so on. It made no sense. You know, it didn't look like a linear scanning procedure.
I got what you mean,
that mankind might observe, use or require.
Yeah, this is totally bizarre. Now, just for curiosity's sakes, too, at this point, when you're seeing this stuff happening, at this point where we're at now, how close was this to your location? Because I know it must have been getting pretty close.
Oh, well, now, at first I had rolled down my window to listen for sound.
I was going to ask.
Sound's the key to all this. As this bird is approaching me, it's making a sort of a whirring sound that was full of harmonic overtones.
Okay.
So I would first describe it as a sort of simple whistling.
Right.
But in addition, it had a sort of pinging whistling, which would have suggested, radio frequency, high energy, more or less like we might associate with a neon lamp if you were to put your stethoscope up to the bulb.
Gotcha.
And so that sound did change as the lamp fired off and became...
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting.
And rather than have more of a whirring sound, it seemed to have more of a rushing, air sucking kind of a sound.
Okay, well, geez, that's weird.
Yeah. Now, at this point, I'm concerned about both sound and lighting and surface texture. So I park my Jeep, which basically I figure either this sucker's going to blast me right off the face of the earth or beam me up or something. So, he knows I'm here,
Well, yeah, I imagine.
It's not like I can run. So I go ahead and park the Jeep, throw her in park, and, literally almost at the point of locking up the transmission doing it, but I didn't care. I wanted to sit up on the driver's side door out the window and get my head up above the car so I could watch everything it might possibly do.
Right.
Meanwhile, this Huey helicopter had...
I was wondering where that went to, because I figured that must have been close by.
Yeah, here he had parked now at the point when they came to nearly a full halt and slowed down. I would say, in airspeed terms, you couldn't have said it was more than 20 knots.
Jeez.
But as being such a big thing at 20 knots, it looks like it's a small boat coming into the dock kind of thing.
You bet. Hey, that's going to take something, as far as I know anyways, and I'm sure everybody else knows, it's going to take some power and some speed to keep something like that up.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus,
Well, I couldn't imagine anything other than pure magnetism driving it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And so the helicopter had essentially was following in hot pursuit, had sort of parked itself, but then came slowly, inching fragmentally in a sort of sporadic motion up towards us. And my biggest fear at this point was that the helicopter was going to fire off an anti-aircraft missile, and I would see one big flash of light, and it was goodbye, Charlie.
You're right, because it goes, you're sitting there observing this. Maybe it's something that that they don't want. They're definitely not going to want you to see.
Well,
observing it. Who knows? Gosh, who knows?
Look what we have in the Air Force today. I'm some 19-year-old kid with a joystick. A lot more.
You're right. Yeah.
Afraid of him than an alien who kind of like to make it back to Planet X, you know?
Exactly, eh? Jeez.
Yeah, so...
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry or, you know, whatever, but you can imagine the only thing I knew I needed to do was collect the data in my mind and just try and relive the moment as best I could in every regard later. Cause,
well, I guess so.
Some science beyond belief.
Well, you know, just for curiosity, so like when you first saw this thing approaching and whatnot, and until it finally, you know, left the area, how long did it actually stick around for?
Well, it felt like an eternity.
Yeah, probably.
But
yeah.
Again, at 20 knots, I'm thinking, you know, I'm looking at about a 9-second approach from the point when they suddenly came swooping down and then kind of, you know. And after the 9-second approach, I probably didn't have them over my head for more than, you know, a half of a second before this lamp thing started to go.
Right. Yeah.
And after it kind of brightened up, and he created it very quickly. In fact, after it brightened, it wasn't just like one instant solid straight-lined beam.
Mm-hmm.
No, it created a big flood that narrowed down fairly quickly to a true round spot, like you would put on a stage for the singer or the lead star.
Mm-hmm.
And so being as how it was like a follow spot, my next thought was, what's he here for and what's he trying to look at? I mean,
right, exactly.
Somebody's in there looking out through the window trying to figure out, why do we build freeways or what he was about to observe. Now,
exactly, yeah.
On the right side of me, away from all of this, and really in the darkness, is an area called Williams Oil Tank Reserves or something, where they have oil tanks.
Right.
And these are not large, relatively speaking, to which, you know, you might have in a big industrial city. I'd say call these about a 80-foot around 2-story, 3-story oil tank.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's a collection of maybe 4 or 5 of such tanks, and a couple of silo-like things that are more or less farm-scale implements, you know. And he appears to be scanning and illuminating this oil field yard.
Right.
So I have to say, well, here he is checking out what mankind does to store of supply.
Pardon me. Yep, exactly. Hey, they're curious, eh? If that's what it is, they're curious. Let's put it that way.
Of course.
I'm sure, hey, and if it is them, I'm sure they've been here before and been looking around, but hey, who knows what they're up to? But you know, when you can look back at this, you know, seeing the craft, seeing this military helicopter that's doing whatever, observing, following, seeing what it's up to, don't know what to do. Should we shoot on it or not? You know, what I'm trying to get the impression, or get your impression, or your thoughts on, because I know you don't maybe know, but your thoughts. Do you feel this is something that they were like following, something that it might have been a test vehicle, or they were watching, didn't know what the heck to do, because this is definitely an alien craft? I mean, I know you can't answer that like for a fact, but your impression.
You're certainly right to ask, and I've given it a couple of years thought, and I would say my rational concerns earlier on were suggested I should consider both sides of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
I have since fully adopted the one mono concept that it was spotted as an alien craft. It was picked up on radar.
Okay.
He's not supposed to be in either the airport or the nearby Jacksonville airspace.
Right.
And I would suggest that the helicopter that took off from Jacksonville Air Base to actually follow it directly had not traveled more than 80 to 100 miles in order to pick up its path and follow it to this particular destination.
Gotcha.
The helicopter by no means seemed even vaguely up to the task of tracking this particular vehicle.
Maybe that's why they were observing, you might say.
I think so.
I mean, it's like, I guess by my behalf.
And Brian, without missing an equally important detail in this particular portion of your question, on the far left, again, I'm traveling towards Memphis, which is sometimes gets spun around due east from that position.
Mm-hmm.
These things are happening to my left, the north.
Right.
And to my northwest is Jacksonville Air Base over the hill and not visible from my position.
Okay.
But very quickly, in terms of that same time frame, and I would say perhaps you might say was no more than 2 miles outside of the initial target spot where they sort of came to this hover position.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes another helicopter of the most unique quality. And it was a troop loading type of helicopter, very long, very big, and unnaturally military-like.
Would that be with the double rotors?
With the double rotors,
yeah.
Correct, and with a small array of windows and a sort of humpbacked
I know what you mean then, yeah.
look to it, yeah. And it was primered red or primered orange. The conditions of city lighting, it was reflecting a more or less yellowish orange appearance, as if it was a unfinished, unpainted emergency chosen craft.
Gotcha, okay. Yeah.
More or less like something that even you would think was dedicated to become a Coast Guard vehicle, and really it wasn't a normal USAF.
Right, I do understand what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so here comes the second pursuit helicopter as a sort of backup, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And what could I think of that other than maybe they thought they might need troops to pick up the alien body?
Very possible.
So
no, but hey, I mean, this is it. We can theorize all we want, but it's a possibility too. You know.
You just got to kind of reach here.
Right, exactly. That's about what we have to do in most of the stuff, anyways. To do some reaching.
Yeah. Well, let's assume, just to kind of ponder the theory behind that question, that they're gathering information. For them, this oil tank array is one of several types of things they want they're curious about. They want to photograph and send them back to home base and study. Well, as soon as he'd done a quick and simple and very clean sweep across the oil field, he begins to head towards downtown Little Rock.
Jeez.
Now, not a mile and a half away is the river itself, and beyond the river, I know from personal experience, you can sit at the edge of the river and look up the planes when they normally land on the runway at a regular airport. So there's not one person in the control tower over there across the river that's not seeing this on his screen.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, the thousands of people are going to see it fly into Little Rock. Of course, if they're out on Christmas night, chances are they've had some schnapps and they're not going to be totally aware of what they're seeing in the sky. But some people are going to see this.
No, you betcha.
And they're going to report it, and or I could call, and I started realizing nobody's going to tell me anything at the air base.
Yeah. Well, hey, for curiosity's sakes too, if this thing's going to fly over towns that are getting close to it, I mean, there's going to be people driving all over the highways or side roads, whatever there is. And then not only that, if you've got and even if this thing's silent, let's put it this way, at this point, it's a silent. There are going to be some people who are going to spot it. You're not going to miss these sweeping lights unless they ended up turning off. But you're going to end up hearing these helicopters that would most likely still be following it.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
So bizarre.
So by now we got the other helicopter, the bigger orange one that's on my left here, is actually in a better pole position to be the lead chase vehicle. The one that's more or less to my front left is just sort of parked and aiming his rockets at it, just like ready to go,
Yeah, gotcha.
And so the two helicopters then change pole positions, enabling a very gentle sweep towards downtown, and the three of them just carried on out beyond my visibility.
Well, I'll be.
Now, Brian, I got to tell you the wildest thing of the whole vision that happened. And it's very hard to put this on pen or paper, and it's almost, that's the only scary part of what I visualized. As it was approaching, I was looking at something that was basically glossy black on a field of muted golden gray.
Okay.
And that being nighttime, light mist, 61% humidity, Arkansas sky. And again, city lighting enough to give you a good hazy edge to anything out there, black or not. And what I saw on the top edge of this vehicle was the most unthinkably interesting portion of it, all things considered for me, and that is that it looked like it was hand welded.
Jeez, eh?
I've got this giant thing bigger than any Boeing I've ever seen. I wouldn't say it's 10 city blocks or anything absurd,
right?
But in relative scale, you could have easily put 3 bowings tied together with rubber bands and come up with a form about that size.
Gee.
So, really rough numbers, 380, 400 feet in each of the 3 dimensions.
Gotcha, yep, gotcha.
Okay. Now, on the top of this thing, it does appear airplane-like. It has a single monobody kind of formed tail wing structure. And it has a cockpit-like protrusion that just points up from the center.
Okay, yep.
It's not round like a Boeing. It's more or less shaped like a snake's head.
Okay.
And at the top of this array are 2 ultra thick-looking glass panels that have the appearance of snake eyes. No, these are not designed by a man.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
I said, oh yeah, the triangulation and the particular black shadow I was able to see reflecting on the glass from whatever starlight and city light was out there.
Right.
Indicated banker's glass-like thicknesses, 3-inch thick glass, inset by a full, say, 8 inches, like it was an old Dodge pickup, windscreen protector.
Right.
And I thought, well, that's not very aerodynamic. And along the top edge, it looked as if a couple of rednecks had been out here beating on it with a sledgehammer and kind of had to form it back into form.
Jesus.
Not perfect. Not right. Not even close to maybe a prototype.
Yeah, right.
But somehow it looked like the sucker had flipped over and kind of done flipped on its head.
Well, that's pretty incredible. And at this point, this thing's what now? Where is this thing where you're seeing it now? This is heading over town?
And now it's as it was approaching, I was actually looking at it nose on, see?
Jesus.
And that's when I'm seeing it looked like 2 guys would be in there flying. You got your pilot.
Gotcha.
You got this cab-like section that looks about the shape of a, Massey Ferguson tractor, and kind of funny, odd, kind of squarish and roundish at the same time, with these crude 1960s-ish style to it, and these odd snake-like small glass windows. Maybe the heads on these animals might be, 5 inches around or something.
Right.
And then this ribular sort of edged effect that's much cleaner on my left-hand side than on my right-hand side. As I'm looking at it, as though it had been smashed a little bit on the right.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it had been progressively welded and formed back into suitable shape for flying.
Well, that's bizarre, man.
And it's I choke telling you this because who else has seen us craft that big, that close to make that observation?
Right.
Again, not what I wanted to see there.
No, I would definitely. Well, I don't know what I would be doing in that instance. I've seen a few things, but they've been nothing of anything close to this. Just some lights, and they're doing some strange things, and they're all over the mountains and popping all over, doing all kinds of weird stuff. Yeah, I was inside my home when I was watching. I felt pretty safe, and there was a good distance away from Mount Harry Davis. So if I had something like this in front of me, don't know what I'd been doing. I don't know. I'd probably either hightail it. I'd be so curious, but I really wouldn't want to be that close either.
Well, I've kind of wanted to be in the helicopter with the boys following it so I could kind of get their feelings,
Oh, you might have got a good feeling, all right. A good smack or something from somebody. But that's totally bizarre, man. And did this thing, did it radiate any light around it, like create its own light of any sort, like around the craft? Besides like the center ball, that center light, and then of course you had the 3 lights on either point of the triangle.
That's a great question. No, the surface quality was really very similar to a lightly mottled rubber plastic-like and almost glass-like surface. But it was, when I asked myself what color was it, I said it's definitely true black. I mean, it's
Gotcha.
As dark a black ink as we make.
Yep, gotcha.
And upon reflection, it reflected a watery-like appearance.
Oh, for goodness sake. Oh,
now,
cool.
I wouldn't say that it was a moving water-like appearance so much as it was simply a light and gentle, even rippling, rippled surface.
Gotcha, okay.
What we might do to a metal and call it a hammered surface finish.
Right, yep, got what you mean, yep.
And with that in mind, the color that it would reflect was not consistently pure black. But rather, here we're in yellow city-like lighting again. I'm seeing some golden tone reflections that are very predictable.
Yes.
But I'm seeing some transparency to this thing.
Huh. Oh, for goodness.
And I won't say that I could make out a definitive rib pattern through the glass, or that I could tell that it was, wire-framed, and nothing, no distinct visibility through it of any kind.
Well,
but the brightness of the lamp in the middle and the fact that it was reflecting in and around such a bright array of mirrors, did shine a lot of light at the ground and created the reflection that I was seeing most of.
Gotcha, okay.
Or the oil tanker that was white painted with the blue stripes around it.
Right.
Williams,
Gotcha.
And I went back there and I took some black and white pictures to begin to reckon with the scale of things.
Right.
Never really got the pictures blown up or started to work with them to sort of redraw the craft in the scene.
Yeah.
But I certainly intended to do that just to really reckon with the height it was at, the size, the scale of the length against the freeway itself, which was one comparison I had available.
Gotcha.
Or the length of the yard full of oil tankers, again. I'd say a city block, but I define that by saying north-south New York city block.
Gotcha, okay, Jesus, eh? Oh.
So we would say, again, 400 feet at 500, 900 feet in the air. The round dot in the center, I would qualify it right at about 20 feet in that circle. And then I got to see, before it got bright, what really appeared to be a trim ring around the hole that the light was coming out of.
Okay, yeah.
And in observing that trim ring, it was quite exciting to see that it looked just literally metal for metal milled, as if they really didn't want it to look like a ring, but they didn't have another way to sand it down.
Yep, got what you mean. Now, no, but that's weird. The whole thing's weird here. Okay, so this thing here now, as you're watching this thing, moving off, right?
Yeah.
Now, did it pretty much stay same altitude as you lost sight of it, or did it rise up and head off, or just make any move off in some different direction, or?
It was the thing stayed at exactly the same altitude from the point where it got near the freeway. Come here. Sorry, I got a little dog. He doesn't always like to go into his room. Okay. So, yeah, he stayed right at about the same altitude. Now, the wings did sort of tip from side to side. It didn't have a, perfectly smooth banked motion as if whoever was in it even cared about their relative position, wiggling left or right. No one seemed to be performing. And as it headed towards Little Rock, I could only imagine it would have had to have risen a little in altitude just to avoid the freeway members and things of that nature it was about to come across. In all probability, she zoomed right on up into the sky before ever really approaching the larger. We have 3 or 4 skyscrapers downtown, maybe.
Exactly.
4-story buildings,
That's right. So we're looking at something that's going to have to clear that, or they're going to run right into it.
Yeah.
But that's absolutely incredible. Now, when I was at this closest point, sort of backing up a little bit, but at its closest point, when you're sitting there watching this thing all take place, did you ever feel anything from this? Could your body sense anything other than the total rush of blood probably going to your brain with excitement? Did there anything like that? Any kind of sensations at all that you felt came from the object itself?
No, but again, it was clearly a rush of fear and relief in the same breath.
Yeah, right. I got what you mean. Yeah.
And I will point this out. I've lived all over the country and driven around the West 100 times looking for photos in places like Phoenix and Tucson and wonderful destination kind of spots, always thinking about UFOs and hoping to see one.
Right.
And if the only reason I would report on one is that it actually did happen.
Right, exactly. I got you.
Because during all these years, I can't say I really wanted to see one, but I thought if everybody else gets to see one,
why can't I?
You know, why can't I? I mean, there's got to be a lot of them out there, so maybe I'll get lucky one day and see one.
I know. I think even the real skeptic, you know, they talk about a bunch of baloney or nonsense. I think even they probably look up in the sky once in a while and just wish.
Yeah, sure they wish. Sure they want to.
I'll believe it when I see it, sort of thing, eh?
Exactly.
You know, so.
You know, that's social conditioning there, but.
That's right.
When you're really confronted with one at arm's length, and all I could do is to say to myself, man, this is going to mean a world of new technology for the entire development of my civilization.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the least important element in this little game going on here.
Right, exactly.
You know, if I can convey what I've seen, and some brilliant scientists can convey that into a working mechanical model, bingo, we have a success for mankind, you know, so.
Yep, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, your graphic, I should ask you too. Would you mind me posting this graphic of yours?
Not a bit.
Okay.
I'll send you some more. I've probably got some more sketching and work to do.
Oh, if you got some more, I'll hold off on posting then, and I'll hold off and I'll put it all together. So, you know, when you have time, you know, when you got some time, that would be wonderful, because it would be nice to put out, you know, a nice presentation together on this, because it's an amazing, excellent, just an excellent job of graphic. I wish I could do as well, and I can't. So you did a wonderful job on this.
Well, thank you. Oddly enough, I can certainly do better work with pen and ink than I can on a computer, but that's sort of a layering process in Photoshop.
Right. Well, hey, you're doing better than me, because I can't do either.
Oh, you probably could have, Brian.
Oh, I can't. I'm terrible.
A second career here.
Yeah, really.
I really appreciate getting to visit with you this evening.
Oh, I really appreciate it. No, I do. And we'll keep in touch, because I really, you know, there's some other things I wouldn't mind just going over too, and I'll be writing to you. And, yeah, let's keep in touch, because I really do, you know, want to know what other things might have been taking place with this, and if there's other things you might have to say, hey, you know, we don't have to talk about recording it, just, you know, between us or whatever. But it sounds like there's a lot of fascinating things been going on.
Well, they sure have.
Yeah, so, well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you taking your evening from your computer tonight.
You're a gentleman and scholar, Brian.
You only got what? It's midnight now, just about, isn't it?
Let's see.
11.
When that dog starts barking, he's on a tirade.
No, well, there you go. You're just about set for pumpkin time, man.
Okay.
Okay, my friend. Thanks so much, eh?
You bet.